excited to share my insights regarding the microbiome, oral health, and its pertinent in pertinence in immunity. As an introduction to myself, I am board certified in internal medicine, allergy and immunology, as well as obesity medicine. I help run a medical group in the East Bay. We have 3 offices and 8 providers. And we have a multi-specialty group that focuses on primary care, allergy, sleep medicine, diabetes, endocrinology, and functional medicine as well. In addition to that, I also am the Chief Medical Officer of Digby Health, which is a digital informatics platform where we harness the power and knowledge of our DNA as well as a microbiome to help create a tailored dietary intervention to reduce inflammation, improve outcomes in obesity, diabetes, and other chronic illnesses. Let me begin here. So if we can go to the next slide, please. There has been a tremendous shift in our thought process regarding how we think about ourselves as a being. Leonardo da Vinci made this famous diagram, the Vitruvius Man, and it basically, at that time, the thought process was that the human figure was the soul encompassing, most beautiful, unique, and artistic shape that existed. And that we have been, over time, a very much human-centric type species where we tend to believe that everything that is human is the only thing that is unique and powerful. And over the course of millennia, we've, as our scope of knowledge has increased, we've learned that the Earth is not the center of the solar system, that our solar system is not the center of the galaxy, our galaxy is not unique, and that there's many, many layers and aspects to our being that we encompass. And what we have come to realize is that there are trillions and trillions of bacteria that co-inhabit with us and that are important for our immunity. So next slide, please. What we see is that we are actually a superorganism as a human being. We have somewhere around 10 trillion cells that make up all of our organs and all of our substrate that are composed of 23,000 genes. However, there are over 100 trillion bacteria that co-inhabit with us as this superorganism. And collectively, there's around 3 million genes that are present with these bacteria. So they far outnumber genetically as well as functionally what we are as an organism, and how we interact with this microorganism, our human cells and these microorganisms, is what leads to health or disease. And that concept is fairly fresh and is only about 15 years old at this point. The science that enabled this to happen just came to realization in the late 90s and early 2000s. So this is a very hot and emerging topic, and we're learning more and more about it. Next slide. The microbiome is very important and it affects every single aspect of our health, between bone regulations, skin disease and health, nervous system development, how our blood vessels develop and modulate injury, how we deal with fat storage if we get obese or not, how we modulate nutrition, the type of bacteria we have ultimately leads to the amount of energy that we end up utilizing from our food. And in the scope of today's talk, next slide, please. We talk about how the microbiome is extremely important in gut and in oral health as well, and how that oral microbiome specifically can then ultimately affect the rest of the microbiome in our gut and elsewhere, and how it can, if that is imbalanced, that can lead to disease such as dental cavities, gum disease, can predispose to development of cancer, as well as disrupt the other metabolic pathways in our body, leading to obesity, development of diabetes, liver disease, pancreatic cancer, and colon cancer. This is still a very much emerging topic, and given the time that we have, I'm not going to dive too deep into the microbiota aspect of it, which bacteria are off and which ones are not. But the key principles here that I think would be helpful as an introduction are that there are somewhere in the range of about 500 species of bacteria that live in our mouth. And if they're balanced, our teeth and gum remain balanced. And that translates to signaling pathways in the rest of our body, which can key into health or not health. And there's really fantastic data around dental health and risk for cardiac disease. So plaque formation in the arteries of your heart and in your neck that can predispose to stroke or heart attack can be worsened if you have the wrong kind of bacteria. What is interesting here is, unlike bacteria in the gut, where food intake can make a critical difference in terms of how we change things with prebiotics and probiotics, really the care for the mouth is what's more important. So proper oral hygiene, which my colleagues will talk about a little bit more, avoidance of tobacco smoke, avoidance of chewing areca nut, because those can greatly disrupt the microbiome of our oral cavity, which then predisposes us to development of cardiac as well as cancer risk. Next slide, please. As an immunologist, I do want to raise and bring to attention sort of the elephant in the room, which is what we're all dealing with as a collective human species, which is how coronavirus has greatly affected our lives, have really turned our society upside down, and a lot of the mechanisms that we have to socialize, anxiety, to talk to each other, to leverage each other, have greatly been strained by this virus. And I'd like to echo sort of the recommendations that are present on the CDC website, which paramount is very much about social isolation. Staying at home is very, very important so that we limit the spread of this virus. Sanitizing things that come into your house, the grocery bags, especially the plastic coverings and other materials, the mail and those kind of things. That's an important thing, conduit for viruses coming in. Wearing masks outside, as easy as a bandana or a face covering. There's many different options online about making your own mask, and ultimately washing your hands. These 10 little digits that carry viruses all around are very, very important. Next slide. Because of our California's early intervention with social isolation and awareness, we have really bent this curve down. And there's a lot of data that gets thrown our way about how many people are in the hospital, how many ICU beds, and what your curve looks like. Realistically speaking, the main thing that we have to look at here is the incidence of disease or the morbidity or the death rate per population. So we are sitting right now looking very good as compared to the rest of the country. We're 0.2 deaths per 100,000 patients. That is below average for America. If we go to the next slide, the worst case outcome is actually happening in New York right now because of population density and other social measures that were not adhered to. They're seeing 4 daily deaths per 100,000. So that is a 20 times worst case scenario than in New York as compared to California. And all this is doing is just buying us time here so that if we don't continue to do the social distancing, isolating, and limiting the spread. Next slide, please. What we are ultimately getting to is that cure will be the vaccination. And that is a key thing that we have to sort of establish here, is that the best case scenario is that we all get vaccinated so that we have herd immunity in place, so that the majority of the human race does not get infected and deal the burden of disease that we will do. So we're buying the time till we get to that point.